Morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of our July 29 to 30, 2020 board meeting. I'm Greg Lippy, President of the board. Before we convene, I advise all individuals observing or participating in the meeting that the meeting is being conducted consistent with the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. All lines are currently on mute. As I facilitate the meeting, lines will remain on mute until I ask staff to open lines for public comments. I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I have advised staff to allot 2 minutes to each individual providing comments. The approach is necessary to facilitate the meeting and ensure the board has the opportunity to complete its necessary business. I appreciate everyone's understanding and patience as we navigate this meeting format. Before we get started, will the staff moderating the meeting please provide general instructions? Moderator, please go ahead.
Hello, this is the moderator. Before we get started, I would like to remind board members and senior staff who are not speaking to please mute their microphones. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of an unmuted microphone, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder or simply mute your microphone. To facilitate public comment today, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board president reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested at the board's direction, and I will turn on and announce the opening of the Q&A feature. If a member of the public would like to participate in public comment, they must enter the WebEx event through the link that was provided with the agenda. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by clicking on the icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of their WebEx screen. We currently have instructions up on the screen right now, and those instructions will be shared for your reference each time. In the Ask field, typically in the lower right-hand corner of the WebEx screen, members of the public who wish to make a public comment will type, "I would like to make a comment," and send to all panelists. Any other communication will not be responded to. It is not necessary to identify yourself in order to make a public comment, and I will take comments in the order that they are received. I will call on the member of the public to unmute their microphone, and that member of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak and given a 10-second time warning. At the conclusion, their microphone will be muted, and we will move on to the next member of the public who has wished to make public comment. Please note that the Q&A feature is being only used as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. Once unmuted, the member of the public may verbally state their comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. If any attendees utilize a profane name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public from being subjected to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. If you do not have a microphone, please click on Communicate at the top of your screen, then select Audio Connection, Call-in Audio Connection. If you need further assistance, please refer to the How to Join DCA WebEx event guide that was provided with the board meeting link. And that concludes my opening statements. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Okay, yesterday afternoon we covered closed session. So today we will adjourn an open session, and unlike in the past when we had to adjourn and closed. There's going to be a break at approximately 10:30, a 10-minute break, and we will break for lunch at 12 for 40 minutes. I will now take a roll call to establish a quorum. Start with Cheryl Butler. Cheryl?
Here.
Thank you. Okay, Maria Serpa?
Here.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Here.
Thank you. Jig Patel?
Here.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Here.
Thank you. Sung Oh?
Here.
Thank you. And do we now have Shirley Kim?
Yes, here.
Thank you, Shirley. Do we now have Albert Wong?
Albert's here.
Thank you, Albert. Okay, very good. We left off yesterday with AB 3045, so we'll be starting today with 3342 as soon as I locate it. Okay, Assembly Bill 3342, Child Daycare Facilities, epinephrine auto-injectors. AB 3342 is related to the board's jurisdiction, would authorize a pharmacy to furnish epinephrine auto-injectors to the State Department of Healthcare Services under the program created pursuant to the bill, subject to similar requirements. Staff notes in its analysis that the board historically supported such measures and is recommending that the board establish a support position. The committee did not make a recommendation. Members, do you have any comments? And also, as part of your comments, please indicate if you would like to offer a motion to recommend a position to the board on the bill. Members? Anybody?
Hi,
Okay.
Greg, this is Debbie Veal.
Yes.
I would like to, I think the board should support this. I think having the epinephrine injections available is a positive thing and something that we should promote. So I'd like to make a motion that we would support this bill.
Thank you, Debbie. Do we have
I'd like to second.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any more member comments? Okay, then we'll open it up to public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. We're currently sharing instructions on the screen for reference. I'll pause just a moment to allow members of the public to access that Q&A feature. All right, looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Okay, Q&A feature is now closed.
Okay, with a motion and a second, we're now ready to vote. The motion is to support the bill AB 3342. I'll now call Jig Patel. What is your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. Shirley Kim?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh?
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay, now we'll move on to Senate Bill 878, Department of Consumer Affairs licensing applications. SB 878 would require boards within the DCA to prominently display the current time frame for processing initial and renewal license applications on its internet website. As staff notes in the analysis provided, the board publicly reports application processing times as part of the quarterly licensing committee and board meetings. I note that the committee is not recommending a position on the measure. Personally, I agree that a position isn't necessary. The board will continue to publicly report processing times and can transition to meet the provisions of the measure. Members, do you have any comments and or would you like to offer a motion?
Greg, this is Debbie Veal. As chair of the licensing committee, I concur that we actually, this is one of the focuses of our committee, and so we actually talk about it, I think, pretty much at every meeting, and then as you stated, publicly provide information. So I concur. There's no need for us to legislate this.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other member comments? Okay, time for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment just to allow members of the public time to access that Q&A feature. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Right, it is closed.
Okay. Move on to Senate Bill 1474. SB 1474 would extend the operations of several boards for 1 year. In December 2019, the board submitted its sunset review report in anticipation of review by oversight committees this year. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the unprecedented nature of the 2020 legislative session, oversight review was postponed. The extension provided in the measure will allow for our board to be evaluated via the comprehensive sunset review process next year. As a committee, we are recommending establishment of a support position on the measure. With the committee's recommendation serving as the motion, are there any comments on the measure from members? Okay, hearing none, I will open up to public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with the question mark up in the square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, now at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Okay, Q&A feature is now closed.
Okay, with a committee motion, we'll now vote on the motion to support SB 1474, which would extend the operations of several boards, including us, for 1 year. I will ask for the vote of Cheryl Butler first. Cheryl? Remember to unmute.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Shirley Kim?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh?
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes. Motion passes unanimous. Okay. That concludes the legislative portion. Now we're going to move into the regulations. As we move to the regulation portion of my report, I note that information provided is for information only, really. No action. As such, I intend to ask for public comment following each section as opposed to following each regulation specifically. Comments can extend to any of the regulations covered. The board has 2 regulation packages that were recently approved by the Office of Administrative Law. First one is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1706.2 related to abandonment of applications. The regulation change updated the application abandonment language to ensure the provisions applied to all application types. As amended, the regulation ensures that all applicants have proper notice about requirements for application abandonment. The amended regulation becomes effective on October 1st, 2020. The next regulation in this section is to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1707.2 related to duty to consult. The regulation amends the board's regulations regarding the duty to provide consultation for mail order pharmacies. These changes also take effect on October 1, 2020. Members, are there any comments on either of the regulations in this section? Okay. Hearing none, I will ask for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
All right, Q&A
Okay.
feature is now closed.
The next section is discussion and consideration of board adopted regulations undergoing final review by the Office of Administrative Law. This section has two regulations undergoing final review by the Office of Administrative Law. First is proposed regulation to add Title 16, Section 1714.3, Community Pharmacy Staffing. The proposal will establish the criteria a pharmacy must meet to identify and ensure a person is assigned to assist the pharmacist as needed when the pharmacist is working alone in compliance with Business and Profession Code Section 4113.5. The next regulation in this section is proposed regulation to amend Title 16, Section 1769 and 1770, Substantial Relationship and Rehabilitation Criteria. This proposal will increase transparency and clarity to license applicants with respect to rehabilitation criteria the board considers when evaluating an applicant's eligibility for licensure. Members, do you have any comments on either of these regulations in this section? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause for just a minute to allow members of the public to access that Q&A feature.
Doesn't appear we have any comments. So you can go ahead and close it up.
We actually do have one comment.
Oh, we do?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Let's see. Individual identified as Rob Geddes. Give me 1 second while I pull him up. All right, Rob, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'm unmuting your microphone now.
Hi, President Lippy. This is Rob Geddes with Albertsons Companies.
Morning, Rob.
I appreciate the opportunity. I just had one question. In the previous section, it looked like as the Office of Administrative Law approved the regulations, there was a post-dated effective date. Just for planning purposes, just wanted to inquire if you would expect a similar action be taken with the community pharmacy staffing regulation.
I'm going to ask Ann Sodergren to respond to that. Ann?
So the effective date will depend on when it is reviewed and approved by OAL. Under the COVID-19 conditions, they have extended their review time. I would expect a decision probably by mid-September, and I believe there will be an immediate effective date on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, the next section is discussion and consideration of board-adopted regulations undergoing formal review by the Department of Consumer Affairs or the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency. The board has two regulations undergoing formal review. Proposed regulation to amend Title 16, Sections 1702, 1702.1, 1702.2, and 1702.5 regarding renewal requirements. This proposal updates the renewal requirement language to include all licensing programs and reduce the administrative workload associated with the need for frequent amendments when new licensing programs are established. The proposal is undergoing formal review by DCA. Next one in this section is Proposed regulation to amend Title 16, Section 1707, off-site storage. This proposal amends the board's regulations regarding the waiver requirements for off-site storage of records to allow those cited for a records violation to receive a waiver to store records off-site. This proposal is also undergoing formal review by DCA. Members, are there any comments on either of these regulations in this section? Okay, hearing none, I will ask for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause for a moment to allow you to time to access that Q&A feature. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Okay, the next section is discussion and consideration of board-approved regulations undergoing public comment. The board currently has 2 regulations in the public comment period. First is proposed regulations to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1711 related to quality assurance programs for ADDS, Section 1713 related to use of receipt and delivery of prescriptions and prescription medications, and to add Section 1715.1 related to ADDS Self-Assessment Form 17M-112. The second proposed regulations in the comment period will require submission of quality assurance records to the board, will update the board regulations with respect to the use of an APDS, and identify the specific requirements for the annual completion of the ADDS self-assessment form. The 45-day comment period for this package ends on August 17th. I would anticipate this proposal will be considered for action during the September board meeting. Next is proposed regulation to add Title 16 CCR Section 1717.5 related to automatic refill programs. The proposal establishes regulatory requirements for automated refill programs. Pre-notice review was completed on this regulation package following release of the meeting materials. We anticipate the public comment period will begin on July 17, 2020. Members, are there any comments related to these regulations that are out for public comment? Okay, hearing none, I will open up for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
This is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon with the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause for just a moment to allow you time to access that Q&A feature. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Great, Q&A feature is now closed.
Okay, the next section is discussion and consideration of board-approved regulations undergoing pre-notice review by the Department of Consumer Affairs or the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. At the time of releasing the materials, the board had and still has 6 regulation packages undergoing review. I'm going to read all 6 at this time. Proposed regulations to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1793.5 related to the pharmacy technician application, Section 1793.6 related to the pharmacy technician training requirements, and Section 1793.65 related to the pharmacy technician certification programs. This proposal establishes the training requirements and certification programs and updates the application for licensure for pharmacy technicians. This regulation package was originally approved by the board in October 2016, and changes have been made and have been requested on several occasions. The package has was resubmitted for pre-notice review in October 2018 and returned to the board for amendments to implement provisions of AB 2138 in December 2019. The next one is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1715 to update self-assessment forms 17M-13 and 17M-14. The proposal updates the self-assessment forms, which I just mentioned, as incorporated by reference in Title 16 CCR Section 1715. Additionally, the regulation updates Section 1715 with clarifying language as to the completion and certification requirements of the self-assessment forms. It has been undergoing pre-notice review since December of 2018. Next is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1784 to update the wholesaler 3PL self-assessment form 17M-26. This proposal updates self-assessment form 17M-26 as incorporated by reference in Title 16 CCR Section 1784. Additionally, the regulation updates Section 1784 with clarifying language as to the completion and certification requirements of the self-assessment form. As with the prior package, this regulation proposal has also been undergoing pre-notice review since December of 2018. The next one is proposed permanent regulation to add Title 16 CCR Section 1747 related to independent HIV pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis furnishing. This proposal will make permanent the emergency regulations that establish the criteria for training programs to meet in order to be offered to pharmacists so that the pharmacists may independently initiate and furnish pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis. Pre-notice review on the package started on February 7, 2020. The current emergency regulation will expire on October 28, 2020. During our committee meeting, members discussed the provision for extending the current emergency regulation if necessary. Members were advised at that time that the board can seek 2 90-day extensions of the emergency regulation. The next one is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1715.65, which is related to inventory reconciliation. This proposal amends and clarifies the requirements for the completion of the inventory reconciliation report. The package was referred to DCA for pre-notice review on May 11, 2020. The final one is proposed regulation, the final one in this group, is the proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1715.6 related to drug losses. This proposal amends the drug loss reporting requirements to further define when drug losses must be reported to increase clarity for the regulated public. The package was referred to DCA for pre-notice review on June 3, 2020. Members, are there any comments on these 6 regulations that I just read? Not hearing any comments. It's time for public comment. Please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon of the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. We'll pause for just a moment to allow you time to access that Q&A feature. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Great, Q&A feature is now closed.
Thank you. Okay, the next group is discussion and consideration of board-approved text to initiate rulemaking. Staff is drafting documents for pre-notice review by the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. The board has 1 regulation currently with staff. That is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1709 related to pharmacy ownership, management, and control, including through trusts. This proposal amends the board's regulations regarding ownership to include provisions relating to trust ownership of pharmacies. The package was returned to the board on April 22nd, 2020. The package was originally approved by the board in October 2016. As with the prior regulation, changes have been requested on several occasions. Members, do you have any comments on this regulation, proposed regulation? Hearing none, we will open for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon of the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause for just a moment to allow you time to access that Q&A feature. All right, and at this time, it looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Great, the Q&A feature is now closed.
Okay, that concludes my report on legislation and regulation. The next report is Organizational Development Committee report, and as none of the items within the report require action, I will cover all the items and then take member and public comments. First item is continuing education policy for attendance at committee and board meetings. Under existing law, a pharmacist or pharmacy technician may earn continuing education for attending a board or committee meeting. As indicated in the chair report, with the transition to the WebEx platform, credit for attendance at board and committee meetings cannot be given at this time, given the requirements of the regulation. Next item is budget update and report. The board's budget authority for the fiscal year is $29.3 million, which is about a 2% increase from last year. The meeting materials provide preliminary budget figures for the first 11 months of the last fiscal year. It reflects that 89% of the revenue received is from licensing fees, with 7% coming from cost recovery balance, the balance of 3% from fines assessed. Personnel was the board's largest expenditure at 63%, followed by 13% in pro rata, 17% in enforcement, and 3% in facility operations. A review of our fund condition indicates the end of 2019-2020, our fund was down to 2.7 months in reserve. This is in large part due to a $2.4 million loan to the general fund. We will need to continue to monitor our fund very closely to ensure the financial solvency of the board. Next item is DCA Annual Pro Rata Report. Members, Attachment 2 includes a copy of DCA's annual report to the legislature detailing the accounting of its pro rata calculations. As included in the report, the board's allocated distributed costs for the fiscal year will be about $4 million. Next item is board member attendance report. Attachment 3 provides a summary of our attendance for last year. Next item is personnel update. The meeting materials indicate the board currently has 14 vacant positions, including the assistant executive officer position, which is currently being interviewed for. Next is meeting calendar for remainder of 2020. Attachment 4 includes the meeting schedule for the remainder of the year. I really appreciate everyone's flexibility as we continue to adapt in response to the public health crisis. Please note that the date for the next licensing committee has changed. Next is proposed meeting calendar for 2021. The last item for discussion under the report is the proposed meeting dates for next calendar year. Until conditions approve, we are unable to confirm if the meetings will be in person or via WebEx. We will continue to use our website and subscriber alert system to keep people informed. Members, do you have any comments on any of the items I just read?
Yeah, great. Who picks the assistant?
Who picks the assistant? That would be the board would give final approval.
So the sorry to interrupt, I will be doing the hiring and conferring with the president and vice president.
That's the part of the board that's going to give the final approval. Thank you.
Okay.
But it is the job of the executive officer. Okay. Next item is the executive officer's report. Ann?
Thank you. I'll try to keep it short, but I thank you for the opportunity to provide the report. So since March, the board has been very involved in the response to COVID-19. Included in my report is a summary of some of the board's actions as well as actions taken by some of the other entities. As you are aware, since early March, the board has been granting waivers to pharmacy law and its regulations consistent with the provisions of law, with the first waivers being issued on March 11th. As detailed in the report, the board is issuing broad waivers as well as site-specific waivers. Broad waivers are posted on the website and subscriber alerts are released. The board is fortunate because we do have authority to waive provisions under the law. This is unique to the board and has really positioned the board to respond quickly. Issuing waivers is about assessing the potential risk and determining on balance what is the most appropriate action for patients given these unique circumstances. Some waivers were approved in anticipation of conditions, while others were approved in response to conditions. The situation continues to be very fluid. Where California was in March is a much different place than where we are now. We are mindful of the conditions as they continue to change. I think for many of us, we were hopeful at the beginning of this crisis that it would have subsided by now. Regrettably, that is just not the case. Temporary solutions need to be assessed for longer-term applicability, and I look forward to the board's discussion on waivers later in this meeting. I want to note that I believe board staff have really demonstrated great flexibility and resiliency through this period. The public response has impacted all areas of our operations, from the board's receptionist fielding calls to staff expediting temporary licenses and reinstating licenses, supervising inspectors that are partnering with me on many issues, including waivers, development of draft guidance documents, and inspector staff providing input both on waivers as well as completing timely investigations on COVID-related issues. I'm really just so fortunate to work with such great employees. The report also highlights the various aspects of our COVID response, so I'm not going to go into a lot of great detail. In addition to actions taken independently, we have had an opportunity to really partner with the administration and sister agencies, including such things as developing guidance and joint statements, coordinating licensure at surge capacity locations, waiver requests, and communication plans. I do note that agencies are taking different approaches based on differing authorities. So as indicated in the report, the DCA director has the authority to waive provisions through the duration of the declared emergency, whereas CDPH has taken a different approach of suspending regulatory enforcement with some stated exceptions. So as I said, I'm really looking forward to the discussion later. I also wanted to just quickly highlight some of the operational changes. Where possible, we have been transitioning office staff to teleworking on a rotational basis. However, there are several rate-limiting factors, including equipment, reliance on paper, and manual processes. As we look to the future, it will be important for us to continue to evolve operationally. As you are aware, the board's office was closed to the public for several weeks beginning of March through early June. At that time, we also suspended inspections. Although the offices were closed and inspections stopped, we continued all areas of operation, albeit in a different fashion. Prior to reopening, we developed plans detailing operational changes, safety measures, and rotational schedules, and a separate plan was developed for field staff that similarly detailed provisions specifically for resumption of inspections and safeguards. These plans do, however, remain very fluid. I note that the decision to perform inspections is a deliberate one, and we assess local conditions and practice site-specific conditions prior to conducting an inspection. Further, we are also limiting the time we are spending in any facility. Also, as indicated in the report, in early March to July 1, over 2,800 hours have been dedicated to our COVID response. This will increase significantly beginning in July as 5 staff have been redirected to perform contact tracing activities. And further, as part of our inspection process, field staff will be evaluating for compliance with statewide guidance, including the use of face masks and other operational changes. President Lippy, would you like me to ask if there are any member comments at this time or continue on?
Go ahead and ask for member comments, please.
Members, any questions on COVID? Okay, I'll take that as a no.
Actually,
go
and
ahead.
this is Debbie, I have one, only that I think that you've done an outstanding job of leading us through this very interesting, challenging, unscripted time, and so I appreciate your leadership.
I agree with that completely.
Thank you.
And do we have any
Yes.
any positive personnel in the department?
I'm sorry, I could only hear part of that. Any positive, I'm sorry, personnel, what was that?
Albert, please repeat the question.
Yes. I would like to know, is there any personnel in our Board of Pharmacy is test positive?
So I'm not quite sure that that is public information, but we are working with the administration and responding. We have a lot of really good safeguards in place. We're working with the Department of Public Health and DCA and following all of their guidance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ann. Please go ahead.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is just provide an update on cures. So as detailed in the report, you can see that pharmacists continue to really robustly use the system. And really, the use of the system is one of the key tools in exercising corresponding responsibility. You know, we have this huge public health crisis going on right now, but the world continues, right? And including the opioid epidemic. So it really shows that pharmacists are continuing to appropriately exercise their corresponding responsibility by and large, and that's very good to see. There are going to be additional changes made to the CURE system, and we are going to continue to monitor the data. I am hopeful that moving forward, the DOJ will be able to provide us with annual data reports instead of just the quarterly. So I look forward to providing you with more annual information when it's available. I wanted to also just take a quick minute to remind members and stakeholders about some upcoming changes to the CURE system, including the requirement to report Schedule 5 prescriptions and the change in the reporting requirements, which will be to 1 business day. In addition, there's also going to be changes will be taking effect on the security prescription forms. So the information is covered in the report. We'll also have information in the Board of Pharmacies in our CE Law webinar that's been released, discusses these transitional issues. And we're also going to highlight it in the upcoming issue of the script. In addition, we're also partnering with the Department of Justice and the Medical Board on the development of a joint release statement. Such an approach with these joint statements is really just necessary because it really does ensure consistency in the messaging. Are there any questions on cures? Okay, then I'm going to quickly move on to a few national things that are happening on the national front. The FDA has released its sample MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, addressing human compounding. So I just want to let members know that at the staff level, we do have some concerns with the provisions of the draft MOU, but we recognize that the MOU has some potential restrictions on businesses, so it's just really going to all be a balance. Ultimately, the issue will need to be evaluated by the Enforcement and Compounding Committee, but at this point, I wanted to let members know that it's out and that staff are monitoring the issue. The last thing on the national level is the NABP annual meeting was earlier this year. The meeting was conducted virtually with President Lippy serving as the board's delegate. The report highlights the resolutions adopted during the meeting, as well as the findings of work group reports that were provided. Should it be helpful, I have provided the press release, the executive director's report, and the task force report. During the meeting, Al Carter has become the NABP's new executive director. The district meeting will be held virtually on October 13th, and the next annual meeting is scheduled for May 13th through 15th. I am hopeful that I will be provide the opportunity to represent the board at the national level through participation in one or more of the task forces that are being established at this time. So with that, I'll conclude. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ann. I think at this point, I'm going to, I think I'm going to call a 10-minute break at this time.
President Lippy, could you ask if there's any public comment on the last reports? Thanks.
Sure, thank you. Are there any public comments? Please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator. At the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. It looks like we do have one individual who has requested comment right now. Danny Martinez. Danny, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. Give me 1 second while I get my timer up. All right, and I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. I just have a question. Under item 1, where it says that inspectors would be partnering with other agencies for compliance, assessing the compliance of statewide mask mandates. Could the board or the executive officer expand a little bit more as to what they're looking for? And is this limited to the licensees, or are they also looking at potential patients and customers who walk into the pharmacy?
President Lippy, with your approval, I'll go ahead and respond.
Please do.
Yeah, so Danny, really what we're doing is looking for overall compliance. So whether it's members of the public or the facility itself, recognizing that, you know, we might be in a pharmacy of which our jurisdiction is in one section, but the overall compliance of it. We are not being super aggressive in enforcement, if that makes sense. We're not going up to people and confronting them, but we are, if it doesn't appear that there's an understanding of what is required, we do have the different guidance documents that we are providing and ensuring that there's education to achieve compliance. So far, everybody seems to be doing really well. We are reporting to the administration on our findings as well.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, and that was the only individual who requested public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Okay. Right. We will take a 10-minute break at this time instead of 10:30 because of the way the schedule is breaking out here. So, thank you.
This is the moderator. We'll be back at 10:04.
We'll do a roll call to see that everybody has returned. So, start with Maria Serpa. Maria?
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie? Debbie Veal? Not back yet?
Sorry, yep, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. Sung Oh?
I'm here.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler?
Here.
Thank you. Shirley Kim?
Here.
Thank you. Jig Patel?
Here.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Here.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, we're all here. The next item on the agenda Item 12, review of policy granting president discretion to waive provisions of pharmacy law, including the authority to extend waivers. During our March 2020 meeting, the board delegated the authority to the board president to extend previously granted waivers not considered by the board for up to 90 days. During the May 2020 meeting, the board delegated authority to the board president to grant a waiver for up to 90 days and to extend an existing waiver for up to 90 days. Regrettably, as cases continue to rise, it appears that waivers of pharmacy law and its regulations may be necessary for a longer duration than originally anticipated. Several waivers are reaching the maximum period for me as president to issue or extend. The item is on the agenda to provide us with an opportunity to determine if any additional changes should be made to the existing delegated authority, or if it is the preference of the board to review each waiver that expires on a moving forward basis. It appears, based on the information provided in the executive officer's report, agencies are taking various approaches to the waivers. Members, if we wish to delegate additional authority, it will require formal action. Should we decide the current delegated authority is appropriate, we can decide actions to extend future waivers as part of board meetings. With that, I would appreciate members sharing their thoughts on the issue. Should a member believe it is appropriate to delegate authority beyond what is currently authorized, I would request that a motion be offered. Members, please speak up, give me your thoughts. Now, we have allowed a number of waivers to expire because they either were not needed anymore or were not being used. But the ones that we extended are ones that pretty much need to be extended further. So I'd like to hear from you if you want to grant the authority to me to extend them additionally, or if you would like to bring each of the expired ones to board meetings for the full board to approve.
I would like to know from Ann is that so far is all the waivers working okay? Is there any more different kind of waiver being requested?
President Libby, may I respond?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're monitoring waivers in a couple of different ways. So we are doing some calls to different pharmacies to see what waivers they're using. And then additionally, as we're doing our inspections, and previously when we were doing desk audits, we were also collecting information. So it seems like what we have is working. I do think that as consistent with what President Lippy indicated, there are some that probably the board's going to need to really consider extending because there's just really still a need for it. So example, PPE, although supplies have improved, I don't think that, the marketplace is ready to go back. And so although it creates a risk when you reuse PPE on balance, given the alternative, it's probably appropriate to extend. In addition to the broad waivers, right, we do get the site-specific waivers, and we're evaluating those. And if we feel that there's one that would have broad application, then we're considering it that way as well. But I think that our decision points at the beginning of the crisis and where we are now probably should, it's appropriate for them to be different, right? We've learned a lot. There's been a lot of changes made, even just in the operations of pharmacies. So recognizing where the disease is, but the protections that are in place now that probably were not there at the beginning of the crisis, I do think probably gives the board a little more flexibility in its decision making, recognizing at the end of the day, we need to do what's right for patients.
I would like to make a note.
Albert, bottom line is it's been working pretty well.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I would like to make a motion to extend the authority for the president to continue to grant the waivers.
I'll second that, Ricardo.
Thank you.
Maria, as part of the discussion, I'm torn between, because right now the president has the authority to extend waivers for up to 6 months. So this would only be in cases where the waivers exceed 6 months.
Correct.
And whether those issues should be brought to the full board if it's exceeding 6 months. I certainly don't want to have a part where they expire or the timing doesn't work out right. But I think that if we're looking at a waiver that is approaching 5 or 6 months, that the full board should talk about it, or a subcommittee of the board instead of a single individual. I understand you have the support of the office and the inspectors, but I think 6 months is, to me, is kind of like a dividing line.
Okay. Any other comments? Other comments? Okay.
Well, I guess, you know, if, I don't know, Albert, what you think about Maria's suggestion, if you want to incorporate, if you want to make it more blanket and not have a timeline. I don't want her comment just to drop. I think, I think we should talk about that.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
So
okay.
My suggestion for Albert would be either to take my comment in full, or to say the president's authorities exceeded up to like 1 year. You know, so he can do it 90 days up to a year, or 90 days up to 9 months, but up to something, or to that authority.
How about up to 9 months, or the end of the pandemic, whichever's first comes earlier.
The declared emergency? Because it wouldn't.
Something like that.
I think 9 months probably right, because the term of the president probably expired at that time, so 9 months probably okay.
Yeah. And we're speaking about.
So the other thing is, are we saying that every 90 days he has to renew, or are we giving him the ability to grant a 6 or 9 month waiver?
I think every 90 days probably okay. He could continue to renew them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too.
Yeah,
and I would like for it not to be or when the pandemic ends, because I think we got into this conversation last time. Because if you say that and the pandemic, you know, ends, like, you know, a notice comes out and the pandemic, you know, the president or the governor or whatever says, okay, it's the emergency's over.
And then it starts again.
And what's the date? You know, so I think the waiver, I think we need to, the people who get a waiver need to have a known end date. And so I would prefer to keep it with a known end date and not until the pandemic ends.
Okay, so you want to make it 9 months?
I would say 9 months reasonable.
And my question is, you are talking about waivers that you've already given, correct?
No, that includes new waivers as well.
Okay, so so we will be told what those waivers are, correct?
Oh, yeah, they're reported out. Actually, you all get emails about the waivers as they are granted.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe we can keep this as like an agenda item that you can, whether it be part of your org report or the executive officer report, but we can just kind of go over the waivers so that everyone's comfortable with, you know, the thought process behind any new waivers. Does that kind of?
We can list them at the meetings, which waivers, you know, have been granted between the last meeting and the current meeting.
Yeah, because I was curious as to, was there a waiver granted for techs to do instruct patients on testing for COVID-19? Was there some waiver given for that?
To text?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So Cheryl, if I can just chime in really fast, the board does not have the authority through its waiver process to expand the scope of practice.
Okay.
Just in general.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so.
President Lippy, I apologize. May I get some clarification on what the motion is?
Yeah, I think the motion is to extend the authority to 9 months. So that would mean that it would be 9 months for a new waiver, and it would be for an existing waiver an additional 90 days, I guess, beyond the current 6 months.
I think I heard that the way that you currently have, you can grant a waiver for up to 90 days and extend
Right.
for up to 90 days
Right.
times 2.
Okay, great. Don't abuse the power like Trump now.
May I clarify?
All right, you guys work it out and then let me know what it is.
Yes, it wasn't going to be a 9-month waiver. It would be a 90-day waiver that could be extended twice up to 9 months.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, that is my motion, yes.
Oh, yeah, I have no intention of giving a 9-month waiver. No way, yeah, okay.
And just to get
The motion is 90 days and 2 90-day extensions.
And that would be true for all waivers, is that correct?
Right.
So ones that have already been granted, you could do an additional 90 days
90
depending
days.
on what's been granted up till now, and then for anything after this, is that correct?
That's the way it sounds to me. Is that correct,
Yeah,
Albert?
yeah, that's what we would want. So anyone any new or old could have, in effect,
A
9 months.
maximum of 90 days.
Yeah, 90 days with
I mean, a maximum of 9 months to
additional
be
renewals.
renewed every 90 days, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, so it's okay.
Okay, that's the motion, by Albert, and the second was Cheryl?
Ricardo, okay.
Ricardo, I'm sorry. Okay. Second was Ricardo. So Ricardo, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. We have members' comments. Now it's time for public comment. So moderator, please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that Q&A icon at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. All right, and it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment, Danny Martinez. Danny, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'm unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. So I understand, support this motion. I have a question. So, obviously we can't tell when this pandemic is going to end. So if in the instance where a waiver has gone through 2 extensions, and there's a determined need to go beyond that, what is the process that the board intends to take after, should the waiver, in the board's opinion, be needed beyond the 2 90-day extensions?
The full board would be acting on the waiver. So
the formal vote by the board.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I think what we should probably do is, if I've given the 2 extensions and it looks like it could be lasting longer, once the second extension is a month or 2 away, we should bring it to the board so that in the event it has to be extended again and the board decides, we won't be going for a period of time where it's expired.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
This is the moderator, and that was the only individual who has requested public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Yes, Q&A feature is now closed.
Okay, thank you. Well, the next item is item 13, and technically because...
Mr. President, I don't think you called for a vote.
Oh, that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
See, he's abusing his power already.
Yeah, exactly. You guys got me so shook up here. Okay, let's start with Jig Patel. Jig?
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. Shirley Kim?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung Oh?
Yes.
Thank you. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay, now, item 13 was drawn up basically in the event that we did not extend my authority. But I think because even though we did extend it, and I can handle these, this is a good time for the board to at least hear what these are, these ones that are going to be coming up. So I'm going to go through them. Okay, as I mentioned, there are several waivers that will expire before the end of September, and here they are. First one is signature requirement for receipt of delivery of drugs. This waives the signature requirement for the receipt of the delivery of drugs under specified conditions. Now, this waiver may be appropriate for extension until the emergency declaration is lifted. And with that, I would intend to extend it. Now, what this says is that it waives the signature requirement. It does not waive the need for a pharmacist to approve the delivery. They just don't have to sign. They do have to be present. The next one is a prescriber dispensing medication to emergency room patients. This waives the prohibition against a prescriber dispensing medications to an emergency room patient under specified conditions. The details are in your book. The next one would be requirement for consulting pharmacists to perform visits to clinics. It waives the requirement for consulting pharmacists to perform quarterly visits to a clinic. And obviously, it's because of COVID that we do not want them to be making visits in person. The fourth one would be requirements related to use of personal protective equipment. And that is the one that relates to the use of equipment allowing for a PPE mask and a gown to be used by staff performing sterile compounding under specified conditions. And number 5 is compounding aseptic isolators or compounding aseptic containment isolators. It allows for the potential waiver of required PPE for compounding performed in a compounding aseptic isolator or containment isolator under specified conditions. The 6th one is waives the inspection requirement for a condition of licensure of an ADDS under specified conditions, and those conditions are indicated in the book and or in the file. And the 7th one is a restoration of retired or canceled pharmacist license. This waives the condition for reinstatement of a canceled or retired pharmacist license. This is not one that's been revoked. It's canceled or retired. Next item, or the next one, would be requirement for in-person consultation under specified conditions. And that one, again, does not require in-person if they have another way of doing it by phone, etc. And then the last one I'm going to mention is a waiver on limitation on provision of remote order entry so that the techs can do order entry from a remote location. So those are the items that have been granted waivers. They're about to expire, and we will look into these thoroughly to make sure whether we decide to extend them or let them expire. But that's the type of thing that we're dealing with. So I just wanted you to know.
Thank you.
Do we have any member comments?
Hi, Greg. This is I just have a question for Ann about the remote processing. Before the waiver, what was the, could you just clarify, because I could not figure out, what is the definition of the within a premise? Because before even the waiver, I think working remote was going on as far as I know. I'm trying to get a good understanding of what it was already allowed and what did this additionally accomplish.
With your, I believe, here's what I will say, is that I believe that there may have been some in the marketplace that were maybe exceeding what the authority of existing law was prior to COVID. And I would like to request that the board recognize that there may be issues under investigation, and as such, I would prefer to not go into specifics right now because of pending matters. And at some point, happy to have a more robust discussion, probably through the licensing committee. But given pending matters, I would be hesitant to have a conversation right now.
So in other words, they weren't supposed to be doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, I have a question.
Well, I think just to clarify, I think what Ann states is probably more complete than what you just said, just so that your information doesn't confuse the issue or get into that.
Go ahead.
I think you may have I don't think you have all the information to state it in one sentence. So I just wanted to be clear that.
Yeah, what Ann said is, yes, that some may have exceeded the authority. I agree with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Greg, on item number 4, that we use a PPE. Now, I understand at the beginning of the pandemic, there's a shortage, but now there's no shortage. Any reason why we keep extending the waiver?
Well, we are being told that there still is a shortage.
Yeah, so there, just for what's happening out in the community, there still is a shortage, and now the shortages are changing. And so it's not over yet, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now it's time for public comment. Please open the lines.
All right, this is the moderator. I have opened up the Q&A feature at the direction of the board. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon as a question mark within the square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause for just a moment to allow members of the public to access that Q&A feature. All right, it looks like we do have one individual who would like to make public comment. Individual identified as John Gray. All right, John, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Hi there, this is John Gray from Kaiser Permanente. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. So just really quickly, I wanted to convey that, the board has gone through kind of at least one round of reviewing and calling down the current waivers that are in place. And so given that, and given the state of the pandemic here in California being what it is, we see the majority of the waivers on the list that President Lippy reviewed as being important to continue at the current time and most likely through the duration of the public health emergency. So again, thank you for giving us the chance to provide our comments, and we're just hopeful that the board will have a relatively high bar to not continue any of these waivers.
Thank you, John. Do we have
This is the moderator.
comment?
This is the moderator. Looks like there are no other requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Okay. Next item is we've got a presentation scheduled, but it's not scheduled. It's not going to happen until 1 o'clock. So looking to see if we can do anything else. Well, I can read item 15. That is consideration of board approval of proposed board-provided training program as required by SB 159, which is PEP and PrEP. Members, subsequent to the release of the agenda, we received notice that the proposed training program is not ready for our review as it is undergoing review by experts. I'm hopeful that the training program will be complete and ready for our review at the September board meeting. And at this point, we're going to be taking a break because of the fact that the presentation in item 14, as I mentioned, will be again at 1 o'clock. So we are on break until 1 o'clock.
Anne, is there any chance that we can reach out to those folks and they can move it up, or?
No, we've tried.
Okay.
It's 1 o'clock.
Okay.
My fault for getting through this so quickly.
This is the moderator. I do have one of the presenters in the attendee list, Dr. Farnoosh Su.
Well,
so I believe that I believe that there are multiple people. We're happy to reach out, but I do think that we had anticipated a 1 o'clock time, anticipating board business going up through lunch, and as they have their own schedules that they're trying to manage, we're happy to reach out if you'd like to give us a few minutes, but I'm not quite sure that all of the members would be available to present at this time.
okay, why don't we try again? Anne, why don't you see if you can reach them?
So maybe
may I suggest that maybe a 15-minute break, and then that gives staff
Yes.
an opportunity, and then maybe we can reconvene about 10:50, and we'll provide you with a status.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll be on break until 10:50. Thank you.
Here.
Thank you. Shirley Kim.
Here.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Here.
Thank you. Sung Oh.
Here.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
here.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Here.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez. Ricardo, are you here? You muted? I guess he's not back. Okay. Well.
This is Ricardo. Did you call me, Greg?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Okay, you're here. Great. Thanks. Okay. Before we, Anne, were you able to find out anything yet?
We're waiting to hear back. We're hopeful that noon might work, but
Okay.
we're waiting to hear back.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's come to my attention that someone who was unable to be here yesterday has would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda. So please open the line for the person that would like to make a comment.
Okay, this is the moderator. I'll be opening up the Q&A. Oh, apologies, Anne. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, President Lippy, I think we should open it up for everybody that would like to make public comment for items not on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Thanks.
All right, this is the moderator again. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment for items not on the agenda. All right, so we do have one individual. Daniel Robinson. Let me find you in my attendees list. Okay, Daniel, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you, and I apologize for not being here yesterday during the open comment section. I'm the Dean of the College of Pharmacy at Western University of Health Sciences, and I am representing the 13 colleges of pharmacy in the state of California, the deans of those colleges, in asking if the board, we could add to the board's agenda a review and justification of continued use of CPJE within the state of California. There has been considerable correspondence between the deans and the Board of Pharmacy, but I would like to ask to have this placed on a future agenda and possibly have a work group study this and provide a review and justification. So if, with your permission, that is my request.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to make a motion to put that and.
We can't do it. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, we can do a motion for that.
Yeah, this is Albert Wong. I would like to make a motion to put that on the future agenda.
Thank you, Albert. We have a second?
This is Cheryl. I'll second.
Thank you, Cheryl. Member comments?
This is Maria Serpa. I would suggest that it go to a committee to fully discuss and vet before coming to the full board.
Okay.
Yeah, Maria, I would agree, and I'm thinking licensing. Is the enforcement licensing? I think it's licensing. What do you think, Ann?
It makes sense to me.
I do agree.
Yeah, I do. I agree also. So, Albert, you want to change your motion then to put it on a committee agenda?
That's what I just said. I say I agree.
Okay. That means you're changing your motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Cheryl, do you accept that?
Yes.
Okay. So then it will be placed on the agenda of the licensing committee, provided we vote that way. So, any other member comments? Okay, let's open for public comment. Moderator?
This is the moderator. This is the moderator. The Q&A panel is still open for public comment, so members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon of the question mark within a square located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow you time to access that Q&A feature. All right, this is the moderator. Looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Okay. Wait a minute. There are no requests for public comment regarding the motion and so on, but
Correct.
I'd like to leave it open for any other public comment at all at this point regarding items that aren't on the agenda.
Yes, and Mr. President, you can take the vote on this motion and then see if there are additional public comments for items on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Let's start with Maria Serpa. Your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Debbie Veal? Debbie?
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Sung Oh?
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you. Shirley Kim?
Yes.
Thank you. Jig Patel?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert Wong?
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. So it will be added to the licensing committee agenda. Now, does anybody else have a comment, any public comment on items that are not on the agenda? Okay.
The moderator, members of the public, if you would like to make any comments for items that are not on the agenda, the Q&A panel is still open for that.
President Lippy, while we're waiting to see if there's any additional public comment for items not on the agenda, it is my understanding that the researchers have confirmed that they are available at 12 o'clock today.
Okay, great. So being that it's 11 o'clock now, why don't we take an early lunch break and be back at 12 o'clock?
All right, this is the moderator. Looks like there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to go ahead and close that?
Yes.
Okay.
So we will be back at 12 o'clock?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I was just wondering if it would be helpful to have that reflected on the slide that the moderator puts up.
This is the moderator. We'll get a 12 p.m. return time up on the slide.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you. This is the moderator. Just as a reminder to any members of the public who are currently on the line, we'll be reconvening at 12 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Maria Serpa.
Here.
Thank you. Debbie Veal. Debbie Veal. I'll skip. Sung Oh.
Here.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Here.
Thank you. Shirley Kim.
Here.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Here.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez. Ricardo, are you unmuted? Okay, I'll move to Albert Wong. Albert?
I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll go back to Debbie Veal. Debbie? Not here? All right.
Sorry, I'm
Ricardo?
here. I'm
Okay.
here.
Thank you. Ricardo, are you here? I hear some sound, but I don't hear a voice. Okay, well, anyway, I guess he'll join us. We can start. Okay, members, included in the winter 2020 issue of the Journal of Contemporary Pharmacy Practice, original research was published called Examining Students' Attitudes Toward Academic Dishonesty in California Pharmacy Schools. Please welcome the following speakers. Dr. Paul Gavaza, lead author on the article and associate professor of pharmaceutical and administrative sciences. Dr. Farnoosh, pardon my, is it Zoe? Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Farnoosh Zoe Associate Professor of Pharmacy Practice, Director of IPPE Program, and Co-Advisor for CAPS Lead. Dr. Lawrence Chu, graduate of the class of 2020 and CAPS Lead team who carried out the research. Dr. Nancy Kawahara, Assistant Dean for Co-Curriculum and Mentorship, Associate Professor of Pharmacy Practice, and Co-Advisor of CAPS Lead. Welcome these people to provide a presentation on the research. Thank you. Please go ahead. We can start, okay. Based on the program here, Dr. Chu is listed first. Does that mean you're going to begin?
Yes, he should be. This is Dr. Kawahara, but Lawrence should be center. Are you unmuted, Lawrence?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, I apologize for that. I'm in an area with poor Wi-Fi, but so yes, this is Lawrence. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to the Board of Pharmacy for the invitation to present our findings. So as stated, the title of our study was Examining Students' Attitudes Toward Academic Dishonesty in California Pharmacy Schools. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so I just want to acknowledge that this was spearheaded by our team at the time, who unfortunately couldn't be with us, but I wanted to thank them for their contributions here. Their names are listed. And next slide, please. So to start off, for those who don't know, this started off as part of a research project from CAPS Lead, which is the California Pharmacy Student Leadership Program, which first held its conference in 2003 in Pasadena and was funded by Rite Aid and Pfizer. The overall goal of the program was to help foster pharmacy students' self-reflection and the development of their leadership skills for future endeavors. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background of our research project, as to why it's important. Well, the first thing is, as we all know, cheating is in fact prevalent in all forms of higher education and not just pharmacy school. And as a result, it is important for institutions to figure out how we can help deter this and curb it by first understanding why students feel compelled to cheat and understand what students believe constitutes as cheating. So next slide, please. This is just an image of the poster that was created from our research that was presented at CSHP.
Great, this is Ricardo on.
Okay, so this is just a brief image, but if we can go to the next slide and we can jump into the study here. So the main objective of our study was to explore the California student pharmacist opinions of academic dishonesty. To do this, we did a convenience sampling with an electronic survey, which was sent to 13 California pharmacy schools at the time to evaluate the students' definition of cheating, their motivating factors, their views, and their perceived long-term consequences. Next slide, please. Right here, you'll see a brief demographic slide. Majority of our respondents, as you know, were female. Majority were less than 30 years of age and had a bachelor's degree. Majority had a GPA above a 3.0 on a 4.0 scale, and majority response were either first or second year students. Next slide, please. So just to jump right into it, some of the key findings that we had, the first that I wanted to highlight was that majority of the respondents did in fact indicate that they would cheat if it meant passing a class, with 195 students agreeing to it, and majority would cheat if everyone else was cheating, with 186 students responding, agreeing to that statement. This right here is very concerning as we see that one of the main motivating factors is to pass a class and to succeed, quote unquote, in a pharmacy school. Another key finding was that many students also agreed or strongly agreed with the statement that I feel more tempted to cheat in difficult classes than in easier ones. Now, granted, our study did not dissect into what classes were considered difficult or easier ones, but from conversations, I believe the general consensus was, referring to difficult classes being like therapeutics versus basic sciences. That's just more anecdotal, though. Another key finding we had was that most students disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement, it is not easy for me or others to cheat in pharmacy school. So on the flip side of that, the statement would then be, it is in fact easy for them to cheat in pharmacy school. Now, I do want to highlight that in our study, the definition of cheating was a little bit vague, and it was up to interpretation of the respondents as to what they felt constituted cheating. With that being said, this number could increase or decrease either way. However, with that being said, it is still very concerning knowing that majority of students believe that cheating is in fact, quote unquote, easy for them to accomplish. The last key finding that we would like to bring up was that most students disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement, faculty and staff at my school take appropriate measures to prevent cheating, with 215 students claiming that their respective institutions did not have enough measures in place. So with that being said, next slide, please, if you will. So before I get on to my next point, this slide here just kind of shows some of the other studies. So the first one being the Rabi SM and Patton LR and Fjordtoft et al. So in their study, they had similar findings with 16.3% versus our study of 16.4% of students admitting to cheating. Similarly, they had 74% of their students admitted to working on an individual assignment with a friend. In other words, 74% of those students admitted that they knowingly collaborated on an assignment when in fact they knew that it was supposed to be individual work, which as we all know constitutes academic dishonesty. Another study was the Ip, EJ, Nguyen K, Shaw BM et al., where they reported 11.8% of students reported cheating. They also reported that 56.8% of students reported that they were aware that cheating was occurring, which was consistent with our finding of 66.1%. This right here, extremely alarming once again, because with that being said, majority of students are witnessing this, and yet nothing is being done, or students are getting away with it. So with that being said, that kind of goes into our previous point that something is going on in institutions, their protocols may not be up to par. Next slide, please. Now, with that in mind, as we all know, recent occurrences with the CPJE was extremely alarming, as that basically, sorry, let me just catch up here. With that basically showing or demonstrating that this behavior of academic dishonesty does in fact translate after graduate school into whether it's postgraduate examination or even potentially into future practice. It demonstrates that students don't fully understand what is considered academic dishonesty. As some of you may know if you've read the current case on the situation, and they don't really understand what the long-term consequences are. Most students seem to be a little bit short-sighted in what they're trying to accomplish, as earlier most students reported that they would cheat if it meant passing a course. So with that being said, one thing that I think I just want to anecdotally add here is that with the current climate of the COVID-19 virus, majority of institutions are in fact going on to online didactic teaching and assessments, which really draws the question of how institutions are going to help prevent or deter students from acting dishonestly in terms of academia. Next slide, please. So I did, in fact, want to bring up the limitations of our studies. So first being that we did, in fact, have a suboptimal response rate. So considering the average amount of students in the respective schools of pharmacy, we did have a pretty low response. And in fact, one school didn't respond at all. Another limitation was that given the topic being controversial and sensitive, students may or may not have responded true to nature. In other words, they may have responded in an ethical way, which may not actually reflect how they feel or how they would act. However, we would say that this was most likely minimized due to the anonymity of these surveys. Another limitation is just the fact that this was a cross-sectional study. As a result, no causality of variables may be inferred. And last but not least, we were unable to validate actual behavior with the responses of the respondents. Next slide, please. So in conclusion from our study, what we suggest and found is that there is, in fact, variability in the definitions and behaviors amongst pharmacy student respondents. We did find that, in fact, academic dishonesty is highly prevalent and a major issue, and it is up to the students, school administrators, and faculty to help curb the academic dishonesty. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for their time and attention, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Hey, Greg, this is Debbie Veal. I'd like to ask a question.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go ahead. When you sent the surveys out, you said you sent them out to the students and one school didn't respond. Did you send them directly to the students' email, or did you send them to somebody at each one of the pharmacy schools who then was responsible for pushing them out to the schools, or to the students?
Yes, so thank you for that question. So what we did was there was a letter with the link to the survey that we sent to basically the advisors of the CAPS LEAD program at the respective institutions that then helped us basically send it out to their student body. We also, embedded the link in on social media forums such as Facebook on the Loma Linda School of Pharmacy webpage for students to click into to respond to.
And
Dr.
Just one follow-up question. So the CAPS LEAD advisors, did they all acknowledge to you that they did push them out to their student body?
That's a great question. So to my recollection, I don't recall that occurring. So during our this was a team effort, our main leads was Sophia Din and Yubin or Sarah Kim. At that point in time, I believe we took the fact that we were receiving responses back from institutions as basically reflecting that it was in fact sent out to their school of pharmacy. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Any other members have questions?
Hi, this is Song. In your opinion, what do you think, what can we do about this? Or what, is there, in your opinion, is there something that the Board of Pharmacy could do something about it, or schools could do something about it? Because obviously this is concerning, and we can't just take this as a fact, but it seems like there's a really convincing evidence, possible evidence. So do you have any suggestions on what we could do about it?
Thank you for the question. So from a student perspective, I think that one thing personally that I thought was interesting was how institutions such as, using medical schools as example, the fact when they go into like a pass, no pass methodology or into a methodology that kind of eliminates grades per se, I think that it seems that that might be an option. Another thing is also this whole mentality of, well, if they're cheating, I might as well cheat. I think that more stringent, or I don't want to say punitive per se, but to know that the administration of the respective institutions are actually acting upon it would kind of be more, make students feel like, okay, I really should not cheat. There are definitely very strong repercussions. I think like those are some things that could definitely help. From the Board of Pharmacy perspective, I think with the recent CPJE situation, I think that that's kind of a tricky subject. I don't have any response to that. I would say that personally, being an individual preparing for that exam, seeing the increasingly decrease in pass rates is concerning, making most students kind of worry, which may or may not kind of drive them towards dishonest behavior.
I wanted to add too to that. So one of the findings, really surprising findings for me as an instructor, was many of the students do not seem to have an understanding of what constitutes academic dishonesty. So I think some interventions surely can be obtained at each institution to address this. This is a knowledge issue. Just going over again what is academic dishonesty and what is not. And as Lauren said, one of the findings that really surprised me was most of the students believed that cheating was easy, or it was easy to be involved or to commit academic dishonesty. To me, this was really surprising. I was like really shocked to find this idea. Because as an instructor, I think we try to do a good job to make sure that students don't cheat. But for the students to say this in a survey was really surprising. So it can be accurate or not, their perception, but it seems a lot of our students had the perception that cheating is easy. So this perception somehow, I'm not sure, I don't have all the solutions on what can be done, but this is something that can be targeted by intervention.
Thank you. Any additional member comments or questions? Okay,
This is Nancy Kelleher. I'd kind of like to add my 2 cents to that last comment as well. It's a very complex issue, and it has social implications. The thing that catches my eye and concerns me is that a very large percentage of students indicate that they're aware it's happening.
Yeah.
Very few students come forward and share that with faculty and administration. And in fact, in my experience, and I've been at this game for a very long time, students who do come forward, actions are taken, but there's a social stigma that kind of goes along with, I don't want to be the rat, I don't want to, get my friend in trouble. And we really need them. And it's very consistent with the profession of pharmacy. We self-police. And students, we need to do a better job in academia of making sure that students understand from the get-go that self-policing process starts.
One of the suggestions... Excuse me. One of the suggestions that was made was the elimination of grades and going to pass-fail. Doesn't that sort of disincentivize people from working their hardest?
So if I may maybe comment on that. So I believe, and I'm not 100% sure about this, this is just through conversations with other students, but in medical school, and I believe at UCSD School of Pharmacy, they actually do a pass, no pass, but they have what's called a high pass, or in medical school, they do like shadow grading, which may actually kind of be contradicting from my understanding of it. But essentially, there is a high pass, so to speak, which is like a higher merit. So it still incentivizes students to really, drive themselves to kind of meet that and say, oh, well, I passed with high merits in this course. That's my understanding.
So Lawrence, concern is basically that there is a lot of stress, there is a lot of pressure to achieve from a student's point of view. I believe different institutions can deal with this issue in all the different ways. But our finding from our studies that there is a real pressure for students to cheat. It's kind of expected in the pharmacy program to perform and to do well and to get good grades. So this is a problem, but different institutions, I'm sure, will find different ways to handle this. We are not necessarily recommending everyone to change their grading necessarily, but this is Lauren's opinion, I think, which is kind of valid too. But we leave it to readers to decide on their own solutions here. What we can only give you are the finding from study that there's a real pressure.
Right. Thank you.
Greg, would you mind if I asked a question?
Please, go ahead.
If I'm remembering correctly, in the research, there were some questions that also assessed students' perceptions, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but with cheating in academic cheating in college and how that translates into their professional life. Would you have any comments on that you could share, please?
Do you want to go for that? So there was.
I think you're probably referring to the questions that stated, like, a licensed pharmacist is held to an ethically higher standard than a student intern and therefore will not act unethically. Are those the ones you're referring to?
Yes.
Pharmacists will make unethical pharmacists.
Yeah. And we also specifically
large students agreed with those. So some of them at least seem to understand that things you do in the classroom potentially could translate into your professional practice.
Okay, thank you. So let me ask everybody, is the plan for each of you to speak and present, or is it that the presentation is made by one and everybody else is going to be responding to questions? Can somebody answer that?
Lawrence did the presentation.
Okay. So at this point, it's basically all question and answer.
Correct.
Thank you, Dr. Kawahara.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, do we have other member questions? Okay, I'd like to open it up to public comment and questions. So, moderator, could you please open the lines?
All right, this is the moderator, and I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. We'll get instructions up on the screen in just a moment. All right, it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment. Give me 1 second while I get my timer back up. Oh, we have a couple, but we'll start with our first person, Robert Stein. Robert, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'm unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to say, really express my gratitude to the Loma Linda team that did this survey. As an instructor of pharmacy law and ethics, this really, really disturbs me, and this is now going to be a required reading for my course the first day. There is just this kind of academic misadventure is unfortunately common, as we see, and it's absolutely unacceptable in our profession. You know, veracity, honesty, fidelity to your patients, to your school, to your coworkers, to your co-students. These are all critical ethical issues, and if we don't have people that understand that, they shouldn't be in this profession. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Do we have other questions?
Yes, this is the moderator. Sorry, I was trying to get to my unmute button. We'll be moving on to the next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Lori Hensick.
Oh.
All right, Lori,
All right.
you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'm unmuting your microphone now.
Great. Hello, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this as somebody, particularly as somebody who has been who is a formal faculty member at the School of Pharmacy, but then also has continued to precept students. And so I have a couple of, I have one question, I'll start with that, and then I also have a couple of kind of comments from what was interesting, for what I took away from some of the data. The question that I have is really to the group, but also to the board to consider. I'm just not quite sure where the board's jurisdiction lies. And this particular question is, has the research group approached proactively ACPE with this information so that from a global standpoint, perhaps that organization or entity can also help solution find with administrators at the various schools of pharmacy to actually translate this into action. So that's one question, but then I'm not quite sure how the back and forth would work, so I'll make my comments as well about the data. One thing that struck me is that it was very interesting that said that students, about 48.8% of students said that they agree that pharmacy students who cheat will make unethical pharmacists. That's great. That means that 48% are agreeing with that, which, you know, then you would hope means, okay, that we shouldn't then cheat, right? Because it would result in, you know, potentially unethical pharmacists. But then later on, there's another question that says a student who cheats in school is likely to cut corners as a pharmacist, which in my mind is
10 seconds.
To same vein, and yet only about 12% of students agreed. So those two questions both basically elicited an opposing response. So I was just wondering kind of what the team had to say about that.
This is the moderator. I've muted Lori's mic as she has used up her 2 minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
This is Dr. Kawara. I'll take a quick stab at her question. Have we forwarded this to ACPE directly? No. But this issue is always an ongoing topic at ACP meetings in regards to professionalism and academic dishonesty related to student behaviors. So there is broader discussion among the academy about the issue, and no one thus far really seems to have the answer of how to solve it. And then in terms of her question about sort of the conflict in the data, Paul, feel free to chime in here too, since you're the stats guy. But I suspect that cutting corners is too vague, and they don't, I would agree with her comment that cutting corners and unethical behavior could certainly be one and the same. I'm not sure that the students who responded necessarily saw that.
Okay, moderator, because this is a question and answer period, let's disband with the 2-minute requirement. Lori, if you want to respond to this, go ahead.
Sure, let me unmute Lori's mic again.
Right.
Lori, you're unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It was more, like I said, with respect to the data, it was more of an observation that was very interesting, and it just further, I agree with you. It's probably that the students might not be seeing that cutting corners is perhaps the same thing as being unethical, and but it just further demonstrates that perhaps there is that disconnect in the students in the same way that we saw the disconnect with, you know, what their interpretation of academic dishonesty is. So perhaps it just further illuminates the need for a little bit more clarity in that area. So I appreciate your feedback on that. And then with respect to your response about ACPE, Of course, academic dishonesty has probably long been an issue. It's just that we're now learning a little bit more granular detail thanks to your guys' study. I guess I would just ask that one thing that was concerning to hear is that nobody in the group had any answers, and I would just, my follow-up question is then, so does that mean that there was no action that's being taken, or it would still be nice to see if there was some sort of, movement forward with this information?
Okay. Does anybody?
I may respond. Hello? Can I?
Hello? Hi. Does anybody wish to respond to that?
I would like to respond if,
Go ahead.
in regards to what we are planning to do moving forward, I think one of the faculty members who mentioned having students reading this article on the very first day, in our co-curricular professional development series, I think this is one of those articles that across all pharmacy schools, it would be a recommendation to have students read it, reflect on it. And in my opinion, I like to actually maybe have an upfront education to students and give them tiers of what cheating is and what's considered cheating and what the specific consequences are. I think students sometimes are unclear about if they are working on an assignment that was supposed to be individualized and working on it together, what would be the consequence versus cheating on an exam by bringing in a cell phone or so on. The other thing that I think as school members we should really pay attention to that is, and I like to kind of put my feet in a student's shoe, is are our exams reasonably written? Are we expecting our students to know certain knowledge that really will make them competent pharmacists, or are we just asking them to really recall mundane facts? Some things could be always looked up. Some things are fundamental. And I think as an instructor, I like to advise everyone to kind of look back, take a step back and just see, when I want a student to leave my class, would I want them to know X, Y, Z, and am I addressing these in this exam, versus very detailed, mundane things that the next day it's out of their brain.
It's a great point. Thank you.
I agree with that too.
Thank you. Would any of the other panelists would like to respond? If not, yes.
Yes, so this is Lawrence speaking. So I just want to say, as a recent graduate, I will say to the point where the data seemed a little bit conflicting in its respondents, it was very apparent amongst the team when we were kind of analyzing it that, in fact, there was a wide range of understanding as what constituted academic dishonesty. This was definitely a challenge when we were trying to come up with the proper phrasing of the questions of, kind of really weeding through what would really demonstrate what we were trying to get across. But I think, in fact, the data just, once again, clearly illustrates there is a lack of consistent understanding of what constitutes unethical behavior or dishonest behavior. So that was definitely one of the challenges, something we did definitely discuss. But I thank you for that question.
Thank you. Do we have another public question, comment, moderator?
Yes, this is the moderator. We have an individual identified as Stephen Gray. Stephen, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity. This is a super important question and a super important interest of mine. I've been teaching pharmacy law and ethics at the University of California, San Diego for about 12 years now, and I've participated in several national conferences in pharmacy on the issue of honesty in practice and honesty in education. A couple of comments. First of all, what that has led is there is a lot of evidence that shows that the stigma of reporting fellow students or fellow pharmacists or et cetera is widespread worldwide and in almost every culture. And if you think about it, you will find that all of us probably went through periods in our kindergarten years or first grade years where if you told on someone, you were called a tattletale. And that's the child name for what later some would call a fink or a snitch or whatever. That recognition has been addressed in many ways and has already been addressed by the Board of Pharmacy in some of their laws and also by the DEA. And they have found in not just those scenarios, but in other scenarios, that if you pass a law or pass a rule that says you are required by law, you are required by ethical standards to report dishonesty in others, that takes away a lot, not all, but a lot of the stigma. So for an example, the DEA has a regulation that says that all employers that employ people that have access to controlled substances must inform their employees or their personnel that they are required to report diversion as a matter of law. And then the Board of Pharmacy also has regulations that say that if there is diversion or self-use, et cetera, it must be reported. And so one of the things that could be done, both from the Board of Pharmacy and from the schools, is to adopt rules that require reporting and that there's consequences for not reporting. And the military has such rules, and it has been very effective for 100 years. So that's something that is done. The other sad thing, there was a conference in Chicago about 5 years ago, and I was an invited speaker, and the subject of that conference was continuing pharmacist education. And the reports were that the cheating that went on in CE for pharmacists far outweighed the cheating that we're talking about today. And the conclusion of that conference, which was participated by ACPE and all the national pharmacy organizations, was that we should move away from CE as we know it and move to CPD, continuous professional development, as a way of moving forward. And then the other thing that I was surprised to hear is that the students are all licensed professionals. They all have a license issued by this Board of Pharmacy. And yet the schools feel that they are prohibited from reporting to the Board of Pharmacy when they find that students are cheating during their academic year, during the period when they are actually licensed under the Board of Pharmacy. So I think the board needs to have a discussion about what its expectations of the schools are, and at least one person in pharmacy administration in a school has reported that if the board were to enact a law that said that cheating students had to be reported to the Board of Pharmacy, that would go a long way to increasing the awareness and the consequences, and therefore decreasing the cheating that goes on in schools, and then hopefully decrease what goes on. Cheating is prevalent in academia from grade school on up, but it's also very culturally different. And we've learned that even the cultures, not only around the world, but the cultures in cheating from the East Coast to the West Coast in this country are also significantly different. So just some comments that the board should reflect upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Hi, Greg. This is can
yes.
You agendize what's Dr. Gray's suggestion about the mandatory reporting? Is it some ways that we can look at that in licensing committee?
Yes. Let's talk about it later, but yes, that's a good suggestion. Okay. Would any of the panelists like to respond to that? Nope. Okay. Do we have another?
At it. Thanks, Steve. You always have some very intriguing ideas. Certainly, creating, we have rules in place, But as you indicated, there are a lot of social stigmas that go along with being the person who rats out somebody else for not following the rules. And maybe that would help solve it if they understood, if they knew and they didn't do anything about it, that the sort of like guilty by cooperation, so to speak. It's intriguing to me about reporting cheating events to the board because these individuals are licensed interns. I hadn't really thought about that per se. You know, generally if it's egregious enough, we kick them out of school, in which case the board is notified because their intern license is yanked. For less severe infractions, reporting that to the board is kind of a heads up. This person's coming down the pipe, and you know, maybe repeated events would trigger something, probably something worth discussing. I'm not sure all of the schools would jump on board and think it's a good idea.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kohara.
You're welcome.
Would any of the other presenters like to respond? If not, I will go to the next public member, or member of the public, that is.
Great. I have a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, Greg, I do too after.
Okay, great. Albert,
wait for your turn, Ricardo.
Go ahead, Albert.
Will do.
A before R, you know.
Did you say something about age, or was that just a... you know, it's a human nature to take the easiest way out. So, like I said, it's universal. Cheating is universal. But I think we emphasize too much on the consequence. But I don't think we take enough effort to prevent it from happening. For example, like our board exam. You know, when we give 2 board exams on the same day or consecutive day of the same test, you know, you're invited for cheating. But if you have 2 different kind of exam, how the hell can they cheat, you know? So, you know, I think it's partly it's our fault by providing the opportunity. So we got to learn to emphasize a little more on prevention instead of just punishment. Thank you, Albert. Ricardo?
Yeah, my question was basically on other medical professions, you know, a regular physician or say a dentist, dental board. Do they experience the same type of cheating? And what are they doing that's working and what's not working? And I wanted to get some input from our presenters today.
Yeah, I don't know if they actually know if any of those studies have been done, but
but if there is something that's, I never hear of cheating in, you know, from the dental board or regular physician or optometrist and so forth. But it seems to be rampant here in the with us. And it's good to look at, I just thought it would be good to look at what the other schools are doing to the type of tests they're taking or whatever measures that might be helping to prevent it, or if they're having the same problems. I just wanted to put it out there.
Well, I think we should ask the other boards, but in the meantime, do any of our panelists have any information on that?
Thank you. This is Lawrence. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Kay.
No, go ahead, Lawrence.
Oh, I was just going to comment that during the initial research, we did do a literature search. We did find that the majority of data that we could find came from medical schools and School of Nursing, and I believe we had one article, to my recollection, from dentistry, where basically talks more about motivating factors with, you know, stress levels as well as the cost of the education. I don't recall exactly what the conclusions were of those articles at this moment. However, you know, this is information that's out there that other professions have reported on. But I'd be happy to kind of look into that and send it out in the forum for later on. But I don't recall currently what the conclusions were from those studies.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
President Lippy, I'd just
Yes.
like to add that there have been published articles in other professions, and I think that the board has received, or a licensing committee has received some of those articles, like in other states for other non-healthcare licensing exams. There have been public events that have been published in not only the media, but in literature regarding cheating scandals with state licensing exams.
Thank you, Maria. Debbie, do you recall anything in licensing committee on that? Debbie?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Do you recall, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I said, do you recall anything in licensing committee on cheating from other professions in healthcare?
No, I don't think we've addressed it, but I think, you know, it would be, it's definitely something we need to take into consideration.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking into. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I just, Greg, this is Ricardo again. Yeah, there may be something that's they're doing right, or that we might be able to learn from. So I think it would be beneficial for us to look at it.
Best practices are good for everybody. Yes.
Greg, this is Cheryl. I
Cheryl.
thought that at the introduction they said that this was something that was happening. And am I wrong? Did I not hear?
No, you are right. I did hear that also, that it's happening throughout academia.
Yeah, exactly. And then I did hear something about the medical profession just pretty much changed the way that they test. I thought I heard them say something about the testing change. So
Dr. Chu, did you mention that?
Thank you. Yes, yes, I did mention that at the beginning. Sorry, I'm still getting used to that title, Dr. Chu. But yes, I did mention that at the beginning there. So we did, in fact, find that there was reports of cheating, at which point the pass, no pass, that was kind of more of a anecdotal add-on from my end. From discussions with other students, at Loma Linda, being that we have many other healthcare professions, through conversation with students, it seemed that was one of the methods that they thought helped.
Thank you.
President Lippy, this is Anne.
Yes.
Dr. Tracy Montez is on the WebEx. She is the department's psychometric expert. If if it would be helpful for the board to hear from her as well, she is available.
Sure, let's hear it.
Right, this
moderator,
is the moderator.
Could you open her line?
This is the moderator. I'll be unmuting Tracy Montez.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Tracy Montez again. I'm with the Department of Consumer Affairs, and I will add to the conversation by saying that unfortunately we are seeing an increase in cheating for licensing exams across a number of our programs. In the past, there have been certain professions that tended to subvert more than others, but it is certainly increased over the years as there seems to be consensus among candidates that it's okay to cheat, that it's okay to come out of a licensing exam and share the questions, which is actually not correct. We tell them not to communicate content of the exam, but it still seems to be an accepted practice. We find that the best diversion to cheating is when somebody is caught and made an example of. That happened with the architects, the national board. There was actually a whistleblower, and that made some national news, and that did seem obviously to assist in reducing cheating. We've had situations with our Board of Behavioral Sciences where an individual, again, was doing a prep course and they were made an example as well. So there's no, easy, fast answers to this, but certainly communicating that licensing exams are high-stakes exams and it's a patient consumer safety issue. And so that it is critical that you don't share the content of the exam. Your board is very good about putting information out that gives some general context about what's expected on the exam. And again, a lot of times we find that there's just a confusion or a misunderstanding about educational exams versus licensure exams. Education, the intent is to make you ready to practice in the profession, to cover all areas within that field. That's the expectation, and a lot of times grading is on a curve. With licensure exams, we take what is most critical to assess for safe entry-level practice. We put that on the exam, and the standard for passing is entry level. It's not graded on a curve. So we tend to grow up with tests in education that are developed very differently and graded differently as opposed to what a licensure exam is. And so that's where I think sometimes our students and our candidates, there's confusion over that, because in school we are supported, we are given a lot of study guides and assistance, and that tends to carry over into the licensing exam, but that's really not what's supposed to happen. The licensing exam is, the expectation is you come prepared to take that exam. You should not be cheating. So again, I think a lot of it has to do with educating about the differences, the expectations of the exams, and really encouraging people to report exam subversion, because once you have that example, whether somebody's license is pulled or it's delayed, if there's some sort of sanction, that tends to, again, set an example and reduce any type of cheating. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Board Member Albert. I don't think we should prevent the sharing the information, the material. The more they talk about, the more they learn, the better they are. But the problem is that if we have two different tests, they can share all the information they want. As a matter of fact, the more they share, the more they learn, the better they are. But if we have two different tests, how does it help them?
Okay. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Okay. That was a good presentation, Tracy. Thanks. Okay. Do we have another member of the public that wants to speak? Moderator?
Yes, this is the moderator. I have an individual identified as Robert Stein. Robert, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Hi, I just wanted to comment that I'm not seeing an exception in the FERPA law that would permit an educational institution to report academic dishonesty to a state licensing agency. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Important information. Okay, do we have another member of the public?
This is the moderator. It looks like there are no other individuals who have requested public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, go ahead and close the lines for the public, and but I want to keep it open for the panelists and for the members. So, members, do you have any more questions before we close it up? Okay, panelists, do you have any additional things that you would like to say, any additional points you would like to make? No.
So,
if I may, I would like to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I'd
Dr.
like to just make a suggestion in terms of, maybe this is just a random idea, but I think maybe if we have an exam taker actually have a hands-on, like an OSCE, the way Canada, for example, conducts their exams, I think that would really reduce the chance of cheating, because you've got the person in front of you. There's an examiner. So I know this is very labor intensive, but definitely you can not only just assess the individual as how well they can take an exam, but how well can they interact with the patient and exchange their knowledge to that patient and ensure their understanding. So I just wanted to throw that out there to the licensing department.
Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to add something. So first off, I want to thank everybody for their comments and questions. I really appreciate it. I just wanted, this is just a side note for the board to consider, is that recently I took my NAPLEX. I have not taken my CPJE yet. However, I was surprised that while at the Pearson View Center during the allotted 10-minute break, I was allowed to go to the restroom unmonitored, at which point I felt that that is a point where dishonesty can occur. So with that being said, I really liked, I believe it was Mr. Albert who mentioned that prevention is really key, and I do completely agree with that. You know, I think that there are certain measures that are not being taken, and I think that that can definitely help mitigate in the future. So just something to consider. But once again, thank you so much for everybody's questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Boy, you just make my day.
That almost makes me wonder if we should, I mean, how could we, because the students probably have a wealth of information. I wonder how we get the students to anonymously, you know, provide us information, because I think we've asked them in the past to, you know, if you're aware of it, please let us know, and
yeah,
they're not very comfortable doing that. So I don't know if you have any suggestions on how we, you know, get students to, you know, share anonymously when they know that there's some, you know, cheating going on. Especially we, you know, CPJE. What happens in the College of Pharmacies, although we need to monitor it, you know, we will be addressing that. But you know, do you have any idea how we can get the students around the CPJE or even like the NAPLEX to share when they are aware of cheating?
How about I have a comment.
Good answer necessarily to that. Here again, it goes back to sort of the stigma that goes along with being the rat, as Steve Gray so nicely pointed out, that it's much easier for them to just kind of turn the other way, and they figure something, karma will get them, you know, at some point. So I think it needs to start in the schools for sure. And I think students need to have a much better understanding of what it means to be a professional. You know, part of being a professional is that we self-police, and that's why we have the State Board of Pharmacy with pharmacy representation, because we're responsible for self-policing the profession. And I think they need to see that the honesty piece is part of that picture.
Thank you, Dr. Kawahara. Dr. Zoe, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I wanted to make a comment. In addition to what Dr. K mentioned, I think the idea focus should also be placed on making this reporting anonymous. I think this is what I heard from the person asking the question. If there is a way of making sure that I can report without being identified as reported, but you know, like for me to provide all the information, I think more students will be more forthcoming in terms of reporting.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. Dr. Gavaza, did you want to say anything?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. I just want to give everybody an opportunity. Thank you. Okay.
Great.
Yes.
I want to make it clear what I try to speak is that, you know, I mean, we should not discourage them from sharing information and knowledge. The more they share, the more they learn, the better pharmacists they are. So I mean, you know, we shouldn't discourage that. So like I say, we are just too lazy. We're not, provide different examination. If we make more questions and have different tests.
Albert, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how we administer the exam is typically not public information. So to the extent that you can limit it to a little bit more general comments, I think that would be helpful. Thank you, and
Okay.
I apologize for the interruption.
Well, I do not know the detail of the exam anyway, so I cannot share any information. But what I'm trying to say is that, if we give a different exam, then they can share all the information they want. So, I just make sure I get the message across. So, we should not discourage them sharing knowledge. The more they talk about, the more they learn, the better pharmacists they are.
As long as they're not sharing exam questions.
Oh, yeah. But if we don't provide the same exam, how can they share it?
Just to clarify, I think for the members of the public, that anyone taking the CPJE actually signs a waiver and receives written information that they shall not share questions with others. That's something that is publicly given to the individuals and in writing, and I believe they actually sign that document. So they're fully informed that sharing questions is not appropriate.
But actually, Maria, I think beyond that, I think they get it more than once, too. I think they get it when they sign up. I think they get it on the day of the exam, too. So even if they've forgotten about it, I'm pretty sure they sign off on the day of the exam that I know I cannot share these questions. And
yeah, I think Albert had a good point in the fact that you should limit opportunity and do our best to make sure, when exams are given, that, the opportunities are restricted as far as being able to share information. So, one thing was mentioned about, I guess Lawrence said that, they could freely go use the restrooms that were apparently outside of the testing site. And nobody monitored. I think closing up that type of thing is a good idea. Anyway.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody who participated, all our panel. Thank you very much. And thank you to the public for all your questions. And I think that concludes the presentation as far as I can see. Unless, Dr. Kawahara, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say on behalf of the team, thank you very much for this opportunity and your interest in our work. And we look forward to working with you on trying to look at creative solutions to help cut down on this issue.
Great. Well, we look forward to that too. Thank you very much for being here. I apologize for the format. It would be better if we could meet in person, but this is life. Thank you. Okay. I will go on to our next item, which is a second. Well, I think our next item is to adjourn for the day. Do we have any members have any comments you want to make before we do that? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for participating and have a great afternoon. We are now adjourned. Moderator?
All right, this is the moderator. This concludes the pharmacy board meeting. I'll be ending the event now. Thank you.
Thank you.